Right, Temitope Olodo is a security analyst and he joins me on World Now from London to discuss this. Thank you so much for joining us on World Now. Uh,
Thank you
Pal-
very so much for having me.
Absolutely. Palestinian Islamic Jihad has said there would be no ceasefire if members are not freed. Isn't this raising the specter of more violence?
There's no doubt that this is a fragile uh, kind of ceasefire because we know that two of their top ranking, um, at least what you call commanders, is still with the Israeli, with another 19 that have been held by the Israeli. And it is important to understand the shift in the Israeli policy. The initial policy is normally to defend themselves after rockets have landed within the Israeli territory. But for the first time, this is a preemptive strike, which has resulted in the death, according to observers, of 44 Palestinians and 15 of them being children. And I think, of course, it's important to say that this is even much not as worse as the war that happened last year in May. But the issue is this reoccurrence of violence. And many observers have been looking at this and asking the question, where will enough be enough? When are we going to have a solution to this issue and more or less find peace for the Palestinians and the Israelis who are actually on the fire, from these two groups that are always at loggerheads.
But come to think of it, the civilians are the ones bearing the brunt of the fight between Israel and Palestine. There have been more than 500 rockets fired in Israel, sirens heard in Tel Aviv. To what extent do you think Israel is actually looking for a way out?
There are two schools of thought. The bottom line is that many countries have a right, to defend themselves, and that's what we've been calling on every country, including the Nigerian nation where you are, to defend their people that are being picked, by bandits and blow them out of the uh, through the air or whichever means. But Israel is doing what they have to do, to protect their citizens, and Israeli citizens know that Israel will protect them. Over 1,100, missiles were, you know, launched into Israel, and 97% of them was intercepted. You don't pick an Israeli, pick a fight with Israeli, and not feel the consequence of that because you're fighting against a state that protects their citizens. So of course, Israel needs to be a bit more cautious, because of world opinion on the issue. But Israel will tell you that they are defending themselves and preemptive strike is allowed, under international law. Others might have a different view, but we've seen clearly that Americans are already supporting the Israeli as well as the British government. And this is where the problem lies. When you have countries that are willing to support them, and Israeli will do whatever to protect themselves. We've known that since 1967, when this incident have been reoccurring, Israelis will always protect themselves. But we must find a way to find a solution. And many have said that the Israeli government might not actually be interested in solution. And even some analysts have said that maybe it's because of the upcoming election that the Israeli president have decided to, our prime minister have decided to do what he had done. Only God knows. But what we know is that this needs to stop. The Israelis need to be able to live in peace without being
Exactly.
afraid of rockets coming from the other side. And the Gaza people also need to know that their homes will not be destroyed and their children dying on needlessly because
Yeah,
of
it's
some militants doing what they need to do.
right. Right. When we are tired of something and when we don't know what to say, that's when we tend to, leave it in the hand of God. But what we have seen in recent years are short-term agreements that will not address the root cause of the problem because the mediation has focused on conflict management and not conflict resolution. So, from your own perspective, very quickly, would these processes produce effective results?
There's no doubt that it's meant to produce, but I don't see how it will produce. We need to understand that Gaza is more like a prison, and people are stuck there since 2005. We're talking of a lot of years now that they've been blocked both on air, sea, and land, and people feel as if they're caged. But we need to also understand it from the Israeli perspective, who believe that once they allow, a free flow of things from each other, these militants, the ones that are not the majority, but those few people are coming in with weapons that they want to shoot into Israel. And that is where the problem is. And the issue is a two-state solution, as many have advocated. I think that will help. I think there is need for the Israeli to allow these people to be able to, rule themselves. And they will say, of course, we're allowing them to rule themselves, but they prefer to allow the militant to be their chief executive instead of ordinary people that will be looking forward to a solution, a proper solution, where there will be peace in Israel and peace in Palestine.
Fantastic.
As far as I'm concerned, I think there is a serious issue here.
Absolutely.
All the world need to get involved and see.
I think that's a very convenient place for us to leave it and see how peace is actually finally returned, to the Palestinians and the rift between them and the Israel. Security analyst Temitope Olodo, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you so much for having me.